Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Watson Michael from Ceylon Institute of English and Leadership. And we are so happy actually to do this 21st Century Leadership Challenges series and the third episode, which is called the Economic Emergency. And we have with us Dr. Ravi Fernando. So Dr. Fernando, he's on 8 multinational and local boards. He is an alumni of the University of Cambridge and INSEAD Business School, having completed all his sustainability studies, that is postgraduate and masters at University of Cambridge, and all his strategy studies at INSEAD Business School. He's a visiting faculty at INSEAD Business School and is an executive in residence there. Dr. Fernando created the 21st Century Board Leadership Model, and which is developed in June 2020, and a US copyright was secured. It was later converted into a masterclass that is now taught in Luxembourg, Ireland, United Kingdom, and Sri Lanka. And it will be launched in Malaysia, Vietnam, and India in 2022. So our topic today is the economic emergency. And over to you, Doctor.
A very good morning or evening or whatever time of day you are logged in. It is absolutely a great pleasure for me to share my thoughts on the 21st century leadership model because this course is now, like Watson mentioned, already on its third cohort in Luxembourg. It's on to its second cohort in Sri Lanka. It's on to its second cohort in Ireland and United Kingdom, and soon to be launched, as he said, in Vietnam and India. So the more people who understand and get to know about this subject, the better for us, because there is no reason for any country or business to end up with a 19th century leader or an 18th century leader in the 21st century. If you are in the 21st century, then your leadership strategies and everything you do and say must be relevant to the 21st century. So my goal out of this entire masterclass and model is to create a cadre of world-class leaders who are totally relevant in the 21st century. So in other words, I'm also making an assumption that majority of the world's leaders, a majority of the world's national leaders, a majority of the world's business leaders, unfortunately, are not relevant. They are a little irrelevant for the 21st century. And to be relevant in the 21st century, one needs to understand, so who is a 21st century leader?
Yes, Doctor.
And that is the important point, yeah.
Yes, so Doctor, if you can tell us, Doctor, who is exactly a 21st century leader, and could you give some examples of it?
Excellent, excellent. So in my research and in my deliberations, when I created this model in April 2020, and of course, in June 2020, we got the US copyright for this. What prompted me was, like I said at the beginning, a book titled 21 Lessons for the 21st Century by Oxford PhD Yuval Harari. And Yuval Harari wrote 3 books which became famous: Sapiens, Homo Deus, and his third book was 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. So what became obvious to me is, after reading this book and after having studied at probably 2 of the best business school, the best business school in the world at INSEAD Business School in France, and probably the best university in the world, which is Cambridge, I realized that none of them were also talking about these 21 lessons or teaching us about these 21 lessons. And I asked the question, so if the best universities in the world are not telling us about 21st century challenges, 21st century leadership, 21st century strategies, then who is teaching whom these 21 lessons? So that is really the beginning of my journey to create the 21st century leadership model. All the universities in the world and the business schools and the corporate governance courses in the world cover elements of what I'm talking about. But no one is covering the entire story in a course. And when I did a study of all the business schools and all the courses available for anyone to do this, in the top 10 business schools, top 10 universities, I found not more than 10% of the curriculum I have created is being covered by anyone. So then I thought, okay, I must create a model out of this and create a model that is going to be totally covering the whole story 360 degrees and let everyone start getting understanding how to be relevant in the 21st century. So the first question you have asked me today is, so who is a 21st century leader? And why are you saying majority of world leaders and national leaders and business leaders are currently irrelevant? And they're irrelevant not because of any fault of theirs. I want it very clear. They're irrelevant because the curriculums they have learned haven't taught them any of the topics I'm talking about today. That is why they're irrelevant. You see, it is nothing to do with the fact that they are irrelevant. The courses they have studied are irrelevant for the 21st century. Okay? So that is the key point I want to make. Okay, so I have found that there are 4 imperatives for a 21st century leader to be called a 21st century leader. So anyone who's following this course can make a checklist of these 4 items and ask the question, am I 100% up to speed with these 4 issues? And if at the end of this self-analysis, you can put a tick for all 4 of these items, not 1, not 2, not 3, but all 4 of these items, then you can call yourself a 21st century leader. If you are not able to put a tick to any of these items, then you cannot call yourself a relevant 21st century leader. Okay? So now let's look at the 4 items, the 4 traits. I call it the 4 imperatives to be a 21st century leader. Okay? So the first imperative, which you can now rate yourself, and anyone watching this can rate yourself, is, do you have an appreciation for science? Do you have an appreciation for basic science? I'm not talking of anyone being a scientist to be a 21st century leader. I'm saying, do you appreciate science? Do you understand the basics of science? Do you understand that science is to do with observation and experiment and creating hypotheses based on observation and experimenting the reality we see? So that is the first trait of a 21st century leader. Do you appreciate science? Second, the first part continues. So if you have an appreciation of science, you will also mobilize science to meet the challenges of the 21st century. You know, knowing science is one thing. Mobilizing science as a solution to the 21st century challenges is the flip side of the coin, appreciation of science. So first criteria for anyone to be called a 21st century leader is they must appreciate the science and they must mobilize the science to meet the challenges of the 21st century. So that is criteria number 1 or imperative number 1, right? So science-led and science mobilizing. This is the 2 important things. So if you are a leader who understands science, if you are a leader who appreciates science, then you will take everything that the scientists have told us, about the reality this planet is facing, which is now referred to as a code red for humanity by the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, and the climate emergency, you will begin to see this is serious stuff. You won't ignore it because now you know enough science to respect what people are telling us about the danger this planet is faced with. So if you are a science appreciating leader and you're ready to mobilize science, the second criteria or the second imperative is you will have what I call an urgency to impact the climate emergency and the code red for humanity. And you will do this not in the long term, but you will do it in the short term. And you will try to achieve these objectives by 2025, the very latest. And why am I talking about 2025? Because the World Meteorological Organization has now given us a warning. And these are a bunch of scientists who have said that the planet will cross 1.5 to 2 degrees centigrade temperature from a base year of 1880 by 2025. So 2025 is round the corner, just 3 years from now, 3.5 years from now. And if we are serious about understanding science, then we must act with urgency to impact the climate emergency and the code red for humanity. So that is the second imperative. So the reason this second imperative is very important is because when I hear world leaders and national leaders wanting to impact the climate emergency and the code red for humanity in 2040, 2050, 2060, it immediately tells me these are irrelevant leaders. Because if you are a relevant leader and you understand the science, then you won't put 2040, 2050, 2060 as when you're going to act on this. You will act on it immediately. Immediately. You will not postpone acting on it. And the best way I can explain the second imperative is Greta Thurnberg calls this a very urgent crisis and says our house, our planet, is on fire. Now, I want to ask you all a question. If our house, your house that you're living in is on fire, are you going to act on putting the fire out immediately, or are you going to postpone acting on it for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and the next 20 years? Simple question. You will want to act on putting the fire out immediately. So that's why I say any leader who's talking about acting on the climate emergency, on the code red for humanity in the long term, and who thinks that there is time till 2040, 2050, 2060 to do this, I call them irrelevant national leaders and irrelevant business leaders, because they have not understood enough science to understand there is an urgency needed to act on the climate emergency and the code red for humanity. Now, when the UN Secretary General calls it a code red for humanity, that means you have to act on it immediately. You know, it's like having a patient in the emergency unit or the ICU or the intensive care unit, and the doctors and the nurses thinking we can act on this person's emergency next month or the month after or 6 months from now. If there is an emergency patient, you act on the emergency patient immediately, right? You don't postpone acting on that person's illness. So what I'm seeing lacking in world leaders is an urgency to act on the climate emergency as though it was an emergency and needing attention right now. Okay? So that is the second characteristic of a 21st century leader. And when I use that second imperative or criteria, I would say 99.9% of world leaders fail on the second criteria, because nobody seems to be having any urgency to act on the climate emergency. In their talk, in their words, they are pretending like there's an urgency, but in their actions, in their strategies, you can see they are postponing acting on it to 2040, 2050, 2060. So any leader in a business or a nation who is doing that is an irrelevant leader and should not be even use the word leader. I call them non-leaders. Leadership is acting with urgency on the climate emergency. So that is our second characteristic, second imperative for a 21st century leader. So what is the third one? So if you have one, you will immediately act on one, as I said in number 2. The third criteria for a 21st century leader is a leader who understands what I call the triple bottom line business model and creates a triple bottom line business model for the business, or creates a triple bottom line business model for the nation. So if you are not thinking triple bottom line, then I wouldn't call you a 21st century leader. And I want to give credit to the man who created the concept of triple bottom line, John Elkington, in his book Cannibals with Forks in 1997. And he basically talked of having a triple bottom line mindset when we create a business model or a national growth model. So what is this triple bottom line model? The triple bottom line model is where we first understand what is the triple bottom line. Normally, businesses and nations only focus on a single bottom line. What is this bottom line? For businesses, it is a bottom line called profit. And we always talk about profit, 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 profit. So if you are not making a bottom line, you don't have a business. Okay? You can't have a business model without a bottom line, at least in the medium to long term. You can borrow money to keep the business going up to a point, but the business must turn around within the short to medium term. If a country is triple bottom line focused, they will understand that economic growth is a crucial determinant in terms of their GDP, etc. So having a profit model or an economic growth model is the first element of a triple bottom line item. So we call it profit line. But 99.9% of business leaders and national leaders ignore the other two bottom lines. They only focus on the profit bottom line. Okay? And I call them lopsided leaders, because you cannot ever achieve only economic profit and only economic growth without looking at the other two bottom lines. So what are the other two bottom lines? The second bottom line of any business is what I call the planet bottom line, the environmental bottom line. So that is bottom line number 2. Now I started with the top bottom line, profit bottom line. Bottom line 2 is the planet stroke environmental bottom line. And the third, and I would call it the most important bottom line, in my opinion, is what I call the people bottom line or the social bottom line. So if you try to achieve profits and economic growth, ignoring bottom line 2, which is the planet and environment, and if you try to achieve economic growth and profitability, ignoring the people bottom line and social sustainability, I can tell you, you're having a single bottom line business strategy and you're having a single bottom line national growth strategy. And this is the reason that I say 99.9% of world leaders are irrelevant in the 21st century, because most of them try to achieve profit bottom lines, ignoring the planet, ignoring the people. And when they do that, they destroy the planet and they destroy the people along with the planet. And that, to me, is an irrelevant 21st century leader who is putting profit before planet and people, putting economic growth before achieving environmental sustainability and social sustainability. Because if you do that, you are going to do what has happened to the planet over the last 34 years. We have destroyed the planet, we have destroyed humanity and created inequality, where 1% of the people in the world own more than 50 to 60% of the world's wealth. 99% are surviving, and that is because we have ignored people. And number two, in the last 34 years or 35 years, since 1987, when the term sustainable development was first coined, we have for 34 years ignored the planet to the extent that we have now a climate emergency and we now have a code red for humanity. How did world leaders and business leaders ignore the planet so much that we now are facing a code red for humanity? So now you have to bring all three things together for the third criteria, third imperative, a triple bottom line mindset business model or a national model which puts planet and people before profit. The problem in the world today is all the leaders are putting profit before planet and people. And we saw during the COVID-19, so many countries destroy their people, kill their people, because they ignored the principle of triple bottom line management and triple bottom line strategy. And they started trying to open their economies much faster before they treated the people issue of getting COVID vaccinations and keeping them safe. So what are the countries that did that? United States of America, under the single bottom line 19th century leadership of Donald Trump, today has already killed over 700,000 people. And 99% of those deaths are due to his negligence of being a single bottom line, profit before people leader. The number two country which has the most number of deaths in the world today is Brazil, led by Bolsonaro, who is now referred to as Bolsonaro Chainsaw. And this week, the International Criminal Court of Justice has now filed a case against him and called it a case of a crime against humanity, a crime against nature, by his destruction of the Amazon forest. What did he end up doing? He tried to reopen the Brazilian economy before fixing the Brazil's health crisis. He fired 2 ministers of health, and his military leadership all resigned because of this very poor and ignorant leadership of Bolsonaro. So a classic example of a 19th century science ignoring, profit before planet, profit before people leader, just like Donald Trump. And what amazes me is that America, were a country which we thought had advanced thinking, had advanced knowledge, and we all thought that this was an advanced nation, have almost 20 to 25% of its population who yet think Donald Trump did the right thing. So me, that confirms that America is no longer the global leader of anything. Because any country that can ignore the triple bottom line leadership and how Donald Trump and Bolsonaro ruined those countries and are the number one and number two country in the planet which has the most number of COVID deaths, with 700,000 deaths as at this month, October 2021, and 600,000 deaths in Brazil as at October 2021, have shown and confirmed my hypothesis that if you are not a 21st century leader, you will exactly do what these two leaders did for Brazil and USA. So now poor President Biden is trying to undo the damage that this 19th century leader has done to America. And he has a big challenge because you can't stop it, because one of the messages he's giving people is don't take a vaccine. Just imagine telling your people don't take a vaccine, no need to put a mask on. These are the messages that these two 19th century leaders have done. I think both of them, along with a whole bunch of other leaders, should be taken up in the International Court, Criminal Court of Justice, and basically sued for crimes against humanity. So the key lesson I'm bringing from the third imperative is, if you are not a triple bottom line leader, you will end up doing two things. Number one, you will destroy and kill your people. Number one. Number two, you will destroy your planet and your country. That is what these two guys have done. And just to accentuate a key point, Brazil and the Amazon rainforest, we all knew accounted for 20% of the world's oxygen. 20% of the world's oxygen was created in the Amazon rainforest because of all its trees, because of all its beautiful rainforests. I can tell you, since 2018, he has increased the destruction of the Amazon by 40%. And today, 2021 October, I can confirm Brazil, which gave us 20% of the world's oxygen, is now giving us 0% of the world's oxygen. Now, I want to ask you a simple question. If there was a patient in the ICU and that patient was on oxygen, and lots of the patients in the ICU, the emergency units in the world, are on oxygen because they are having a breathing difficulty. And if some doctor comes to the ICU and switches off that oxygen and walks out of the hospital having switched off the oxygen, what will happen to that doctor, Mr. Watson? What will happen to that doctor who switched off the oxygen?
He'll get fired.
What will happen?
He will get fired.
He will be fired. He'll be put in prison for killing a patient. Am I right? Absolutely. He will be not only fired, that doctor or nurse or anyone who switched off the oxygen needed for an emergency patient will be immediately put in prison for murder. Correct? They will be put in prison for murder. Now, this man has done that with 20% of the oxygen of the world. Right. That is why he is now going to be taken up as a criminal in the International Court of Justice, because he has actually killed 600,000 people in Brazil because of his ignorance and because of his not being a 21st century leader. So I hope I have given you some excellent examples of the three characteristics of a 21st century leader. Now I come to the fourth and final characteristic, imperative of a 21st century leader. And that is, I call it embedding the 21st century model that I have created in all their board agendas and their operations committee agendas and their leadership agendas and their cabinet agendas. So the model has 6 elements, and I think you shared the slide at the beginning of the 6 elements. We have a climate emergency, which we have covered. We have a health and social emergency. And then we have today we are discussing the economic emergency. So we have 3 emergencies in this model. Those emergency topics must be on the board agenda, must be on the national growth agenda, must be on the leadership and management committee agenda. If these items are not on the agenda, then we don't have a 21st century leader. who has decided that we need to address these issues and develop proactive strategies to address the issues. The next three elements of the model are what we call the three disruptors. The three disruptors are, we have a technology disruption, we have a geopolitical disruption, and we have the governance disruption. So these 6 elements I talked to you about have to be on the board agenda and have to be on the national agenda and have to be on the operations agenda of any nation or any business. And a 21st century leader will make sure not only that these things are in the agenda, under any other business or something, these 3 things should be addressed, attacked proactively with an urgency to solve those problems, like I talked about under the second imperative. So this then are the 4 characteristics of a world leader or a business leader who is a 21st century leader. And every single one of you who are watching this program can now do a self-analysis and ask the question, am I a 21st century leader? Am I not a 21st century leader? What do I have to do to become a 21st century leader? And how can I learn to be a 21st century leader? And the 21st Century Board Leadership Masterclass and the book that is also going to come on the subject are your 2 ways to become a relevant 21st century leader. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for explaining. And could you explain to us about the economic emergency?
Okay, just before that, I want to give some examples of people who I consider to be 21st century leaders. Okay, so let me start with 21st century business leaders, right? The following are what I call 21st century business leaders, and anyone wants to check on their CVs and their profiles and what they have done to prove that they are following all 4 actions that I mentioned now, all 4 imperatives, can do so. Number 1, 21st century leader, in my opinion, is none other than Elon Musk, who runs 3 of the biggest companies in the world now, Tesla, SpaceX, and SolarCity. This gentleman is a science graduate and has a PhD in science and has also created 3 of the best businesses on the planet. That means he has a triple bottom line mindset. He respects science and he has a triple bottom line mindset. So I would call Elon Musk the most important and most effective and most visionary 21st century leader we have today. After that, I would put down the current CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, as one of the leaders emerging as a 21st century leader. After that, I would put Yvon Chouinard of a company called Patagonia, who actually created the 21st century business model and was driving the triple bottom line from the day he started the business almost 20, 30 years ago. And his company, Patagonia, is, I would say, a world leader in 21st century leadership. The 4th leader that strikes me as a great example of a 21st century leader in today's context is a man called Henrik Paulsen, the former CEO of a Danish company called Ørsted. And we talked about Ørsted when we discussed the climate emergency. What did we learn about this man's leadership? In 2009, interestingly, 2009 is a pivotal year for both Ørsted and Unilever. Ørsted was the Danish oil and gas company. He converted the Danish oil and gas company to become a world leader in renewable energy with wind power. So, Henrik Paulsen, 21st century leader, who shifted from an oil and gas company to become the world leader in renewable energy. And this is a classic example of 21st century leadership. The other leader I want to highlight today is Werner Hoyer, who is the CEO and chairman of the European Investment Bank, who has stopped investing any money in fossil fuels through the bank. And I can tell you the European Investment Bank, I just wrote an INSEAD case study on this and published it in April this year. This is a classic example of a company who have understood the triple bottom line and who have taken decisions to stop funding for polluting fossil fuels like coal, like petroleum, like diesel, and like natural gas. So Werner Hoyer of European Investment Bank, this bank is bigger than the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund combined. Their disbursement per annum is 80 billion euros. So they are bigger than all these other banks combined in terms of multilateral banking. So he is a great leader. And the last, Paul Pullman of Unilever, who once again joined Unilever in 2009. And in 10 years, he made Unilever one of the top 3 companies for sustainable business with a triple bottom line leadership and an urgency to impact the climate emergency. So Paul Pullman, by the way, he just published a new book this month called Be Net Positive. And that is a good example of why I call Paul Pullman a 21st century leader. So these, Michael, are the examples of amazing 21st century leaders in business. But now I want to talk to you a little about national leaders and influencers. Who are the 21st century national leaders? So I would say among the influencers are John Elkington, who created the triple bottom line, Dr. Mark Carney, who is now considered one of the most important financial leaders in the world. He used to be the governor of the Bank of England. And before that, he was the governor of the Bank of Canada. He's a Canadian guy doing an amazing job, Dr. Mark Carney. Then another amazing leader is a guy called Jay Weatherill, who was the former Prime Minister of South Australia. This gentleman has created South Australia to be a world leader in renewable energy, and 100% of South Australia's energy is coming from renewable energy sources. Now, what he has done is absolutely dramatic in South Australia because he had to fight a 19th century science denying, code red for humanity denying, climate emergency denying Steve Morrison, who is the current Prime Minister of Australia, because this gentleman is everything that you shouldn't be in the 21st century. So Jay Weatherill was able to overcome a 19th century leadership of Australia by Steve Morrison and do the right thing for South Australia. So if you are a 21st century leader, you will overcome challenges coming from a 19th century leader and create a business model and a national model, which is triple bottom line. The fourth influencer I have great respect for is Ursula von der Leyen, of the current president of the European Union. She took over office about 2 years ago. And the first thing she did was create what is now known as the European Green Deal for Europe to be net positive in the coming years. So now we can see a leader who's driving the entire European Union agenda based on the 21st century leadership model. And I would probably end with another young lady who is having great influence in the world today, who is calling out 19th century science denying leaders, code red denying leaders, climate emergency denying leaders, and asking them, why have you not put the house on fire off by exiting polluting fossil fuels? Why have you not done that now? Because you are going to impact all the future generations of the world by creating a planet that we can't live in. And this young lady is Greta Thurnberg, who I believe has had greater influence on waking up sleepy 19th century triple bottom line denying planet profit before planet people all over the world by calling them out at the UN General Assembly, calling them out in the World Economic Forum, and calling them out in the European Parliament, and saying, you people are destroying my future. And her name is Greta Thurnberg, who just turned 17 years old. I call her a great influence in the world of triple bottom line thinking and sustainability, because she has achieved more for triple bottom line thinking and the changing of leadership from 19th century leadership to 21st century leadership than I would even say the entire United Nations, because she has been able to pinpoint the way leaders are postponing acting on this matter for 35 years. And she has said, you people are killing us. You people are destroying the planet. Our house is on fire, and you want to put the fire out in 2040, 2050, and 2060, when it should be put out before 2025. So these are the examples of world leaders that all of us should be proud about. And if anyone has any doubts, every one of the names I mentioned today, are conforming to the four characteristics, the four imperatives of 21st century leadership. Every one of the people I mentioned. And we have excellent examples with these leaders that I mentioned. So if anyone says there are no 21st century leaders in the world today, I have just given you a list of world leaders, world influencers, and business leaders who are all 21st century leaders, and not one of them is a 19th century leader who is destroying the planet. All of these are doing their best to survive the planet for future generations. And Greta Thunberg, who I think should have been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize 2 years ago, as soon as she began this movement, has not yet been given the Nobel Peace Prize. But even people like Al Gore, people like Wangari Maathai, who did much less for the planet than Greta Thunberg, have been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. So I hope the Nobel Committee of Stockholm wake up and recognize this amazing world leader who has done amazing things in the planet today. And that she will be given her due recognition to be able to do the right thing, so that we create a leader who other people listen to. And she has done more for the planet than any other leader, as far as I'm concerned, more than the United Nations. Because the United Nations for 34 years, if one measures the success of the United Nations in managing the climate emergency, from its first conference, from its report in 1987, we can say have failed miserably, because the amount of gigatons of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has gone from 21 gigatons to almost 34 gigatons. That means a 60% increase of carbon dioxide. So how can the United Nations ever say they have achieved anything to do with the code red for humanity and the climate emergency? But this young lady has done more to wake up leaders than all these leaders combined. So I think I have given you a very long and lengthy explanation about 21st century leadership, because today, if we don't understand these are the leaders and follow them, then we are losing the battle for the planet. We are losing the battle for humanity. Because one thing is for sure, the planet will survive, even in a damaged form, and the planet will regrow in a good way. But humanity will not survive. It is the humanity and the species that will all be destroyed by this 19th century leadership that we have in the world today. Okay?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Fernando, for explaining. And could you explain to us what is the economic emergency?
Okay, so now in our model, we have three emergencies: climate emergency, social and health emergency, which we covered, and now we are talking about the economic emergency. So the first thing I want to explain to everyone is there are no economic emergencies on its own. Economic emergencies are when you have 19th century leaders ignoring the triple bottom line of addressing the climate emergency and addressing the health and social emergency. When you ignore those two, you end up with the economic emergency. So you can even say economic emergency equals ignoring the climate emergency and ignoring the health and social emergency. The result is you have an economic emergency. Okay? So if people are out of work because they have fallen ill, then you have a social emergency, and that then turns into an economic emergency for the family. If you have somebody out of a job, you are not having money to live, then you have an economic emergency. But the question is, why is that somebody out of the job? It is because they fell ill and they had a health emergency. Or if that person dies, there is a massive economic emergency because the breadwinner is dead. So economic emergencies, number one, don't happen on their own. They happen because of ignoring the climate emergency and ignoring the health and social emergency. And that is why I said the third most important criteria is you have to be a triple bottom line leader who puts people and planet before profit, not profit before people or profit before planet. Okay? Right. So economic emergencies, number one, I have just given you the explanation as to what is an economic emergency. Number two, in the IPCC, International Panel for Climate Change report in October 2018, they told the world's leaders what the economic emergencies will be if the planet crosses what we call 3 planetary boundaries in terms of extreme temperatures. And when we talk about extreme temperatures, I already explained to you, our benchmark year is 1880, when the Industrial Revolution started in the world. So between 1880 and now is what are the temperatures. So what they said in the IPCC report in October 2018 was if the planet crossed plus 1.5 degrees centigrade, and we are now at plus 1.2 degrees centigrade, so only 0.3 degrees centigrade to go before we cross this first dangerous milestone, that the planet's economy will be destroyed by US dollars 54 trillion. 54 trillion of the world economy will be destroyed as soon as we cross 1.5 degrees centigrade. Why? Because when we cross between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees centigrade, we will have a sea level rise of 20 feet because all the ice caps, polar caps, the Arctic, the Antarctic, and the Himalayas will melt, and all that water will contribute to sea level rise of 20 feet, which will destroy most of our major cities in the world and the economic assets in those cities. And that will cause a calamity of between 54 trillion to 67 trillion dollars in a global economy, which is 90 trillion dollars. That means 50 to 70% of our global economy will get wiped out the moment we cross plus 1.5 degrees centigrade. And we are already seeing this impact with the climate emergency, because extreme weather incidents have quadrupled from about 7 per annum in the 70s to nearly 700 now, which is 2 incidents per day versus 7 incidents per annum. Now, if world leaders and business leaders haven't understood this simple statistic, then I call them ignorant 19th century leaders who haven't even understood that the scientists have been telling us extreme weather incidents have happened. because the climate is getting warmer. Because as the temperatures go up, then the three kinds of extreme weather incidents. Number one extreme weather incident is the planet's temperatures go up. So the last 20 years have been the hottest 20 years ever recorded on the history of this planet. Now, if world leaders and business leaders haven't understood that bit of science, they should all be sent for a science 101 class or a basic introduction to science class. And I think no leader should be appointed if they haven't passed a basic science class, because that is why we are having leaders ignoring science. So number one, temperatures have gone up. Number two, when temperatures go up, we have extreme weather in the form of hurricanes, typhoons, flooding, because the temperature is so warm, the precipitation of all the atmospheric water and the groundwater ends up getting caught in the clouds and heats up the oceans and and sends all this into the atmosphere. And then we have massive tornadoes, massive hurricanes, and massive flooding. And today we have so many examples of massive flooding every country. The European Union was underwater just 2 months back. Most of the countries in the European Union. And China was underwater. India was underwater. So many countries were underwater because of these issues. So tornadoes and flooding and rainfall is the second economic impact. And 80% of all the extreme weather incidents of the world leads to flooding. So we must understand flooding is going to wipe out global economies. The third kind of extreme weather incident is droughts. And we are now facing droughts that then lead to wildfires. And majority of the world is having wildfires as we speak. Wildfires in California, wildfires in Europe, wildfires in Australia, wildfires in Siberia, in Russia. And these wildfires are burning down our oxygen tanks called rainforests. And we are now having a calamity facing us, because I can tell you, here's a prediction. In the next 10 years, every one of us will have to wear a face mask when we leave our homes. Not because we are going to catch COVID, but because the air is so polluted, having burnt so much of fossil fuels. Number one. Number two, every one of us will be carrying an oxygen canister in our hip pocket, in our hip flask, like a hip flask, to simply be able to breathe some clean air. Everyone in the world who can afford it will be carrying an oxygen canister. Number three, we'll be carrying another canister for fresh water, because I can tell you there'll be no fresh water when we have destroyed all the fresh water in the world. So something like this, everyone will be carrying in their hands, because there will be no fresh water available, because the world's total fresh water is only 3%. 97% is seawater. So when we pollute, when we melt the freshwater resources in the Arctic, Antarctic, and the Himalayas, what we are really saying is we are melting our fresh water and turning our fresh water into salt water. So you will not have fresh water. So we will have to take the salt water, desalinate it, and then drink it and say we are now drinking fresh water, like what is happening in the Middle East. So every single human being, because of 19th century leaders ignoring the climate emergency, ignoring the science, ignoring the code red for humanity, will be going with a face mask, will have an oxygen tank, small oxygen canister, and a water canister in their pockets, in their hands, because they will not be able to survive 1 hour without these three things. So this is how serious the problem is. Okay. So mark my words, today is the 15th of October, 2021, correct? Am I right?
Yes, 16th of October.
16th of October, 2021. 10 years from now, it'll be 16th of October 2031. And if someone sees this recording in 2031, they will say he was right, because that someone who sees it will be either wearing a face mask or carrying an oxygen canister or carrying a water canister with them, because they will see that I made this prediction 10 years before it happened. And I'm not trying to take any credit for this. This is because I have understood the science and I have understood what is happening in the world, which majority of our world leaders are ignorant about and haven't even done a science 101 class, and therefore are ignoring the science. And also, we have a United Nations who knew about this problem in 1987, 34 years back, and have achieved absolutely nothing in terms of exiting fossil fuels from the planet. And the combination of ignorant leaders in national leadership, ignorant leaders in businesses, and United Nations leaders who thought that they have to be politically correct without taking the actions needed so that they can keep the politicians who are funding the UN going. This is why we now have a code red for humanity. And the last item on the economic emergency is that the report says if we cross 3.7 degrees centigrade plus 3.7, and I can tell you we are coming very close to that. If once we cross 2, the next 1.7 will happen very fast, because as you know, as the water boils closer and closer to the hottest point, it'll boil faster. So they say if we cross 3.7 degrees, the damage to the global economy will be $515 trillion, which means we will wipe out 5 years of economic gain in one shot as soon as we cross the 3.7 degrees barrier. So I hope, Michael, I have now set the stage to talk about economic emergency. I have also set for people to understand the term economic emergency. So economic emergencies happen when you have 19th century leaders who ignore the health emergency, social emergency, and the climate emergency. And 99% of world leaders and 99% of business leaders are actually ignoring the science, and that is why we have a problem. So let me also tell you some important fact about how badly they have ignored the economic emergency. And I will now tell you countries which have what we call country overshoot days 2021. In other words, countries who have used up their carbon budgets way before they should have used it for every country. So if the whole world, I'm just going to mention a few countries. If the whole world used up fossil fuels and used up carbon emissions like these countries, they would have finished their annual budget of 2021 by this date I'm going to give you, right? So understand this word carbon overshoot day, which means that's the day they will use up their entire year's budget, because their per capita consumption of fossil fuels is so high that their entire year's budget will be finished by this date. The whole world's budget will finish on this day. So let me start with the worst countries. The worst countries at the moment for exhausting their carbon budgets. And if the whole world behaved like these two countries, our annual carbon budget will be finished on the 9th of February, and on the 15th of February of the year. That means from March to December, there is no budget. We have exhausted the entire year's budget, and the two countries who are doing that are Qatar and Luxembourg. So their per capita consumption is the highest on the planet of fossil fuels. Now, let's go down that list. The next country is the United Arab Emirates, the Gulf, who would have exhausted the world budget by March 7, and March 14, Canada, Kuwait, United States of America, and Australia by March 22nd would have exhausted the annual carbon budget of the world if the whole world behaved like they do. So these are examples, bad examples. So how did the leaders allow it to happen? That their annual carbon, if the whole world behaved like them, our annual carbon budget for the world will finish by March 26th. So I can tell you, by the 30th of June, if any country behaved like the countries I'm going to mention, we would have finished the year's budget in 6 months. So I'm going to name all the countries who are going to ruin us because of their lack of leadership in terms of reducing their carbon emissions. So I already talked about Qatar, Luxembourg, United Arab Emirates, Canada, Kuwait, United States of America, Australia, even Denmark is in that list. Belgium is in that list. Republic of Korea is in that list. Sweden is in that list. Finland, Singapore, Norway, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Russia, Ireland, Netherlands, Slovenia, Germany, Japan, France, Switzerland, Italy, Portugal, New Zealand, Chile, United Kingdom, Greece, Montenegro, Spain, China, Bahamas, Romania, Argentina, and Iran, South Africa, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Brazil, Mexico, Ukraine, Thailand are all going to finish their carbon budgets between January 1st and July 31st, and which means they are going to have a deficit budget every time they have a per capita consumption of fossil fuels, which means they don't have a budget for the balance 7 months of the year or 6 months of the year. So I hope now you understand the term economic emergency, what a crisis it is. And this is research done by the Earth Overshoot Day National Footprint for Our Biocapacity Accounting 2021 edition. And the Global Footprint Network, if you go to it, you can get all the figures I told you right now. So the world is facing a calamity. And now I hope you understand why I said that majority of the world's leaders, 99% are 19th century science avoiding, code red for humanity avoiding, climate emergency avoiding leaders in business and in nations. Now, what should be the business model of a 21st century company or a nation? So the United Nations in 2015 launched what was known as the Sustainable Development Goals. They launched 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So I will tell you today, any national strategy, any business strategy must focus on 5 of these goals only, not 17, if they want to save the planet and become 21st century enabled countries or businesses. So what are these 5 goals? Number 1 is goal number 7. They must go for 100% affordable and clean energy, renewable energy like solar power, wind power, thermal power, wave power. These are the 4, and hydropower. And even nuclear power today, I consider it a renewable source because nuclear is very clean energy. So these are the 6 energy sources our countries have to go for. But sadly, majority of the countries, especially the following 9 countries, are persisting with polluting coal power. And what are these countries? Starting with Australia, China, India, Mexico, South Africa, Poland, even countries like Germany have a high polluting coal power. Russia. These are the countries who have not yet changed from what I call a 19th century economic growth model driven by not renewable energy, but by fossil fuels. So goal number 1 is a national strategy or a business strategy driven by number 7 goal. The second goal that everyone should focus on is responsible consumption and production. Now, it is because there's irresponsible consumption and production that all these countries I mentioned are going to exhaust their carbon budget in 6 to 7 months and going to not have any budget left for the rest of the year. So goal number 12 is the second most important goal. And everyone should have a strategy that embeds this in their entire strategy. Number 3 is goal number 9. Goal number 9 is industry innovation and infrastructure. Every country must innovate from unsustainable industry, unsustainable innovation, and unsustainable infrastructure to sustainable industry, sustainable national growth, sustainable innovation, and sustainable infrastructure. So that's goal number 3, the third goal. So I have already given you 3 goals: goal number 7, goal number 12, and goal number 9, 7, 12, 9 as essential goals to be part of the national strategy and the business strategy. So one way to find out is your strategy a 21st century strategy is to ask the question, have I embedded these 3 goals in my national strategy? Have I embedded these 3 goals in my business strategy? If I haven't done that, then we are in the 19th century. Okay? So there are 2 other goals that are very important. And these 2 goals, I call them one goal because one depends on the other goal. So what are these 2 final goals? Goal number 15, reforestation. The looking after of our planet in terms of our Amazon rainforest and our oxygen delivering forest cover. We are destroying it, not protecting it. And people like Bolsonaro should be taken to the International Court of Justice because he has switched off 20% of the oxygen of the planet. So the next key goal is to protect our life on the land and protect our life on the sea. And goal number 15 is a very important goal because if we don't look after this goal, you will impact the next goal, which is goal number 6, which is clean water and sanitation and agriculture. You will not have water if you cut down all the trees, if you cut down the entire ecosystem. So rainforests are called rainforests not by chance because they enable the rain cycle. So if you cut down the rainforest, you will not have rain. If you don't have rain, you will not have fresh water. So goal number 15 and 6 are the other 2 goals. So I have given you only 5 goals to look at. You know, I'm not saying the 12 goals are not important, but I'm saying if you want to address the economic emergency, then these are the 5 goals that must be captured in your strategy. Okay? Your business strategy, your national economic growth strategy. If you don't have these 5 goals, you are generally leading your country as a 19th century, science denying, code red for humanity denying, climate emergency denying leader who is actually putting profit before planet and people, and you will ruin the country, you will ruin its economy, you will kill its people because you are basically dragging the whole story down and not moving in the front, like the countries I mentioned, who were referred to in the BBC news yesterday, the countries I mentioned who are persisting with coal power and not exiting coal power. These are the countries who are actually ruining the planet and ruining the earth as they go forward. So now you know what a good economic model must look like. And I think the next big question is, so are there any countries or businesses doing this?
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. So let's start with business because this course is about business leadership. 21st century board leadership model is a business leadership model. So the first company, there are 3 companies I want to showcase to you today. The first one is Unilever, led by Pullman, the former chairman of Unilever. And I already told you that he is clearly a 21st century leader who just published a new book called Be Net Positive. And this gentleman led Unilever from 2009 to 2019. And he launched a strategy called Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. It launched in 2009. And he looked at three things. He looked at reducing the environmental impact of Unilever, number one. So that is, you can refer to the goal I talked about. Goal number 15 and goal number 6 is, and goal number 12 are in his company strategy, right? Because that is the first thing he looked at. How do I reduce the environmental impact of Unilever globally? Number 2, he wanted to make it half what it is today. He wanted to make the environment impact reduced by 50%, but grow the business by 100%. Double the business, half the environmental impact. So now, basically, he has reduced the impact by 3/4 if he does that. So this is an amazing leadership strategy. And he also said, I must improve the health and well-being of 1 billion people in the world, because that is the impact Unilever has with his products. Lastly, he said, I must improve the livelihood of millions of people in the world. So he launched what was known as the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. And the goal of this plan was to make sustainable living commonplace. He wants everyone to have sustainable living. Now, once again, I want to draw your attention to the goal number 12. Sustainable consumption comes from sustainable living. Yeah. So goal number 12, it's once again underlining goal number 12. And what was his vision? He had a vision. He said to grow our business. Now remember, grow our business. He's not saying we are going to stop growing the business. We are going to grow our business with a triple bottom line business model while decoupling our environmental footprint from our growth. Decoupling environmental footprint from our growth. Increasing our positive social impact. Now you can see triple bottom line impacting its people, impacting the planet, and impacting the people of the world. Delivered through the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. Now, that is his vision. That was his goal and our purpose. Now, I am not clear if the new leader who has taken over Unilever, Alan Job, is following the same level of enthusiasm, same level of urgency to impact the climate emergency that Paul Pullman had. My guess is it's not so. And also my guess is, if I talk about this subject to the over 100,000 employees or 500,000 employees of this company, maybe not everyone has the urgency that Paul Pullman had. So there are many leaders of Unilever who probably have heard the term Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, but who are not living with an urgency to impact the climate emergency like Paul Pullman had. So, what did he want to do in terms of strategy? Strategy was to deliver long-term growth and sustainable value creation. Long-term growth and sustainable value creation. Now, one of the things that Paul Pullman said when he came to leadership was, I don't want anyone who wants to have short-term economic growth investing in Unilever shares, because we will not deliver short-term economic growth. What we will deliver is strategic, long-term, sustainable value. That is what we will give you. So if you want to invest in short-term growth, don't invest in Unilever. And he stopped reporting Unilever's results every quarter. He said, I will report it only twice a year, half yearly, end of yearly. Because he didn't want anyone thinking that we have to deliver quarterly results, which is the disaster that the world is facing. He said, if we deliver, we will only deliver long-term value creation. Can you see? Now when he talks about his book being carbon positive, what he's talking is exactly what he preached and what he did in Unilever during his leadership. But I am not convinced that Unilever's current leadership are following this principle and following it with the same enthusiasm and same commitment of Paul Pullman. I started my working career at Unilever too. So I'm following Unilever very, very closely, and I'm proud to say that Unilever is considered the most sustainable company in the planet. But I have questions about Unilever. Why is majority of its packaging single-use plastics that are contributing to the plastic pollution, which we talked about yesterday at the last lecture? Why hasn't Unilever gone into 100% renewable energy for its entire supply chain? Why is Unilever not managing the 2/3 of its impact, which is at consumption level, and as opposed to 1/3 only at the production level? So 2/3 is at consumption. They have to address the consumption strategy. So Unilever has a long way to go, but at least we know Unilever had a leader who got the right thing going. So what does Unilever depend on? They depend on purposeful people, first and foremost. I would call it Unilever depends on triple bottom line minded people. Once again, confirming what I said about what is the characteristic of a 21st century leader. Number 3, triple bottom line mindset, putting planet and people before profit. Number 2, natural resources. So if there are no natural resources, Unilever will not have a business. No nation will have a business. And it is quite shocking for me how we are destroying our natural resources. It is as if we already have a second planet available with natural resources when we finish all the natural resources of this planet. So we have a bunch of leaders who haven't understood the term, the law of diminishing returns, who haven't understood the term, we have limited resources, finite resources, not unlimited resources that we can destroy. So if we have limited resources, then we must manage the limited resources with a 21st century leadership thinking, not unlimited thinking it is unlimited. We have financial resources and we have to manage them to do the right thing. Intangible assets. We have intangible assets in terms of nature, in terms of breathing oxygen, in terms of having fresh food. This is the intangible resources. Intangible assets, we have suppliers and stakeholders and partners. So what Unilever's sustainable living plan depends on are these elements. What value do we create? So what is the value we want to create? Number 1, we want to give value to consumers in terms of consumer benefit. We want to have top and bottom line growth. I talked about triple bottom line, top line and bottom line growth. So profit growth and top line growth both coming together. We want improved health and well-being for all our people. We want enforced environmental impact, and we must manage this in a way that looks at the 5 or 6 goals. And one of the goals I probably didn't talk about is life on land. I talked about goal 15, and managing our oceans is goal number 13. And 14, we must manage our oceans too, because we have 2 earth lungs, the ocean and our nature. Lastly, we must have enhanced livelihood. So everybody must benefit from this. So what has Unilever achieved since they launched this program so many years ago? Let's look at what they have achieved. Number 1, they have been able to reduce their manufacturing carbon footprint by 75%. Now, isn't that quite amazing? Per ton of production, Unilever has reduced their carbon footprint by 75% since Paul Pullman started the program, which is a dramatic reduction. They have reduced their greenhouse gases by 10% since 2010, So now I already told you Unilever has to do much better there. And I already told you where they are dropping the ball. And one of the areas I think Unilever has dropped the ball is they have not been able to inspire its 300 to 400,000 employees to understand and get into the spirit of the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. And I think that's been a failure on the part of its various leaders at various levels and a failure on the part of its HR department, because they should have instilled this in every single employee if they want to achieve this goal. Water. They have been able to reduce their water impact per consumer use. Unfortunately, they have not been able to achieve that yet. However, in manufacturing, they have reduced their water impact by 49% since 2008. So water impact in manufacturing they have reduced, but not at the consumer level. Next issue is waste impact. Now, I already told you Unilever contributes to the world's waste problem with single-use plastics. So at the moment, they have been able to reduce the waste by about 34% since 2010, but that means they yet have 66% yet to reduce. So they have yet a target to achieve. Our manufacturing waste, they have reduced by 96%. So well done. They have reduced the manufacturing waste by 96%. Lastly, sustainable sourcing, which means when they source, they are sourcing sustainably. Now, when you source single-use plastics, you are not sourcing things sustainably. That is unsustainable sourcing. So at the moment, they say the agriculture raw materials, they have reduced got it right by 67%, but they have other sourcing which is contributing to the problem. So when I talk about Unilever or any company, I will not only talk about the good things they have done, I will also talk about the things they need to do yet. But today, I can say Unilever is the leading company in the world that has got at least some of its elements right, whereas most companies have dropped the ball big time on all matters. The next company I want to talk about is a company called Patagonia. And Patagonia is led by an amazing leader called Yvon Chouinard. And what is amazing is from the day he started this company, everything he has done is 21st century criteria led. The 4 criteria I talked about. Has he understood the science? He has understood the science. Number 2, has he urgency to impact the climate emergency? Yes, he has. Number 3, has he installed a triple bottom line business model? Yes, he has. Number 4, has he put the 21st century board leadership model masterclass 6 modules into the agenda of his board, into the agenda of his company? Yes, he has done that. So let's look at what is his great story about. So here's a nice quotation from him. He says, the capitalist ideal is you grow a company and focus on making it as profitable as possible. Then, when you cash out, you become a philanthropist. We believe a company has a responsibility to do that all along, not only when you make your profits, for the sake of the employees and for the sake of the planet. So this is a quotation from Yvon Chouinard of Patagonia, who set up Patagonia as a company that is delivering a lot of outdoor equipment, outdoor clothing, outdoor equipment and clothing. And basically, he has, when he started the company, he put 10% of his profits and 1% of all his sales to what he called earth tax. And with that money, did sustainable strategy all over the world. So normally when a company sells products, it wants to sell more products and more products and more products and start telling people, get rid of your old product, buy your new product, right? Now, listen to Shona's strategy. He tells people, please don't buy a new product. Please don't buy a new product. When your product that you bought from Patagonia has got damaged, when you cannot use it anymore, come back to my company. I will repair it and give it back to you like new. That is our entire business model. And he has 40,000 repair centers in the world whose only job is to refurbish and repair everything he sells. And when he advertises a new product, he says, please don't buy it if you have an old product. Only if you have never bought a Patagonia product in your life, then buy it. Because once you buy a Patagonia product, you and Patagonia will now have a relationship together, and we will keep refurbishing your products and making it like new for as long as we can, 20, 30, 40 years. Now, what do you think of that for a business model? That is his amazing business model. And with that business model, he has reduced the waste, carbon footprint, and water footprint by nearly 30 to 40%. Now, I already told you Unilever now has not been able to do that because 2/3 of its carbon footprint is at consumption. And majority of Unilever products end up in the dustbin. So we cannot do that. And here is a company that is using this. And here's a great vision from Patagonia. He says, Patagonia aims to make its clothing items last a lifetime through high quality and repairability. Repair is a radical act in the Patagonia strategy. Can you imagine a company saying, our strategy is to repair? Just imagine. Companies like Apple then are put to shame because Apple's model is get consumers buying a new Apple every 3 months, every 6 months, and wasting of all the resources. So companies like Apple, companies like Microsoft, unfortunately cannot be called sustainable business model companies because they are always trying to sell another product, whereas Patagonia is trying to sell no products during the lifetime of a person who buys a Patagonia product. Yeah. And I also read that 3 companies, Microsoft, Apple, and even Amazon have actually protested against some of the new climate emergency solving initiatives of the Biden government. So I want to call out these 3 companies and say, all 3 of your companies are unsustainable companies and contributing to the climate emergency of the planet because you have not understood the simple fact that you should not be protesting any initiative. You should be supporting initiatives. And this is what you have dropped the ball on. Yeah. So I can tell you, Google is doing the right thing. Tesla is doing the right thing. Unilever is doing the right thing, but needs to do a few more right things. Okay. But definitely not Amazon, definitely not Microsoft, and definitely not the Amazon, Microsoft, and the third company I mentioned are not doing, Apple are not doing the right thing. Okay. So Jeff Bezos and Virgin Atlantic and started moving on to space with their rockets for space tourism. Now, this tells you something about the 16th century leadership of Jeff Bezos and Virgin Atlantic's leader, Charles Branson. Here, the world is facing a COVID-19 crisis. 90% of Africans can't even afford to buy a COVID vaccine. Yet, only 5% of Africans have been inoculated with COVID-19 vaccines. Is that the time you spend billions and billions of dollars going on a trip for 20 minutes to space and coming back and said, we saw the stars? You should have put that money, Jeff Bezos and Virgin Atlantic, to help get the COVID-19 vaccine to every single consumer in the world before you started talking about selling tickets for $2 million to go on a space trip. So we can see 19th century leaders in these companies. Right. So now, let's now get to our third and final case. Our third case is about electric transportation and electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the revolutions that have begun by none other than Elon Musk is the revolution for electric vehicles. Now, you may ask the question. So let's talk a little about electric vehicles first. What is great about electric vehicles? It does not use even one drop of polluting fossil fuels. So what is the problem the planet is facing? How do we have a climate emergency and a code red for humanity? Because we burn fossil fuels. So if you can make a car without using fossil fuels, you have solved a massive problem in the world, right? So a car without using one drop of fossil fuels. Electric vehicles are run on basically batteries, which are basically a solution to the fossil fuel problem. Now, is Tesla the world's first electric car? What do you think? Do you think Tesla is the world's first electric car?
I don't think so.
Absolutely right. In fact, going back to the 18th century, the first electric car was made then. 18th century, they had electric cars. Then General Motors actually started, the General Motors scientists and technology experts and research and development team developed the world's first electric car called EV1 about 20 years ago. 20 years ago, they developed a prototype of a car called EV1, Electric Vehicle 1. What happened? What happened is that the board of directors of General Motors had 6 people from the oil industry, and they said, if we go and make EV1, our oil sales will come down. Even though all of them knew that oil and petroleum is the cause of the world's biggest problems. So what did they do? They put profit before planet. They put profit before humanity. And they killed the electric car number 1 in General Motors and said, kill this project. Kill this project. And General Motors, if you know, nearly became closed down because its businesses were so badly done. And President Obama was able to give them a lifeline. And today, because of that lifeline, General Motors is existing. A company that could have been the first company to drive electric vehicles in the world now became the 10th or 20th company to think about it. Because of what? Because it had 16th, 17th, 18th century leaders on its board, because it had a 16th, 17th, 18th century leader as CEO, and because it had 16th, 17th, 18th century leaders in its management team and its leadership team. Can you see one wrong leader, like one wrong leader ruined America and Brazil due to its bad leadership, because they ignored 21st century issues like Trump and Bolsonaro. One wrong leader in business can do the same. Okay, so now came Elon Musk, and 10 years ago he started Tesla, and today Tesla is the most high valued and highest market cap company on the planet. Elon Musk today is among the top 3 richest men in the planet. The reason I'm saying this is not because I want to boast about his riches, but if you have a 21st century mindset, if you have a 21st century board leadership model mindset, if you have a triple bottom line mindset, if you respect science, and if you have those 4 criteria, you can do good and do well at the same time. He has become the richest man by doing the right thing. He didn't become the richest man by doing the wrong things. He became the richest man by doing the right thing. And anyone listening to this lecture today, please understand, the best way to become rich is not to become rich in the short term, but to become rich in the long term by doing the right thing today that will impact the planet correctly in the long and medium term. So Tesla today is led by a 21st century leader who understood these simple 4 elements of the 21st century. Now, let's talk a little about the automobile and transportation sector of the world, because this is responsible for nearly 15% of the world's emissions. So when you get into a car, when you get into a plane, when you get into a truck, when you get into a ship, when you get into anything that is using fossil fuels, you are now contributing to a global calamity in terms of warming the planet by burning fossil fuels in it. Okay? So let's look at the change in emissions. So the first biggest cause of emissions, I told you, carbon emissions and carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases, I said is the power industry. So if you have power supply coming from coal, coming from petroleum power plants, that is the #1 cause of the metric tons of carbon dioxide in the planet. Second one is, can you guess? It is SUVs, special utility vehicles, which our ministers are driving in, our leaders are driving in, which are powered by diesel and petroleum. And these are doing 3 to 4 kilometers per 1 liter of petroleum and are the second biggest cause of emissions on the planet from transportation. So I can tell you, I used to drive a SUV myself. And when I was running businesses in the Middle East, I had a brand new Montero. And when I came to Sri Lanka, and in all the countries I worked, in Vietnam, I had a brand new SUV. In Thailand, I had a Land Rover SUV, all driven by diesel. In Sri Lanka, until I became serious about being a 21st century leader, in my companies, I had an SUV and a car in most of the companies as the CEO. Now I can tell you, I'm ashamed of that. I'm ashamed of what I was doing as a 19th, 18th century leader, because I contributed single-handedly to the problem. But I'm happy to say, from the time I started my studies at Cambridge, which was in 2005, and now it's 16 years, I have not ever driven an SUV after that. And I have sold all the SUVs and told companies, if you want to give me an SUV, it has to be an electric SUV or a hybrid SUV. I'm not driving a petrol or diesel SUV. So SUVs is the second biggest contributor to the climate emergency. I don't think anyone understands this. Now, do you know why I say majority of our national leaders in the world are ignorant about the climate emergency? Because if they were educated about the science, they will not be buying new SUVs and running around in SUVs, because they will understand SUVs are part of the problem. They are not part of the solution. And even now I read how they are trying to import more SUVs for national leaders. And this to me is a shame on the national leaders of any country. So I'm going to tell all the people listening to me today, if you are a national leader and you are currently driving or have a SUV for your transportation, which is powered by diesel or petroleum, get rid of it immediately if you want to be a 21st century leader. If you want to remain a 19th century, 18th century leader, continue driving your SUV. Now I'm going to talk to all the business leaders who are listening to this course. If you are a CEO or you are a board member and you have a SUV powered by diesel or petroleum, you should be ashamed of it and you should be getting rid of it today, not tomorrow, and investing in an electric SUV or a hybrid vehicle. Because if you're doing something else, your business model is completely ruined because you are now part of the problem. So SUVs are bad news unless they're electric SUVs or hybrid SUVs. Now, the next category that contributes to the economic destruction are heavy industries. So when we have the fossil fuel industry is a heavy industry and contributing to massive damage to the planet. So the heavy industries of the world are the third biggest contributor after power and SUVs. The fourth biggest contributor are trucks. You and I see trucks all over the planet. 99% of the trucks are powered by what? Diesel. Diesel is the most polluting fossil fuel on the planet. Now, we are happy to see all these trucks taking this item, that item away on the roads in the world. Massive container trucks in America. These are all powered by diesel. Now, any company, any business whose vehicle fleet is powered by diesel or petroleum is a 19th century company who have ignored the science and who have ignored the climate emergency. So get rid of those things if you're serious about the climate emergency. Don't talk about how you're saving the planet by doing little bits of eyewash, greenwash. Get rid of your fleet, have a new fleet. And today I'm happy to say many of the courier companies in the world are going for 100% electric driven vehicles. And I'm proud to say that they have understood this simple reality. So what is the fifth cause of the economic model getting ruined? Aviation. All the people who are flying around in the planet, all the people who are sometimes flying in the morning to Paris or Singapore and coming back home in the evening are causing massive, catastrophic damage to the entire planet by doing that. I used to do that too. I used to spend 5 to 6 months of every year going to Europe and teaching sustainability. And thank God for COVID-19, I cannot do that anymore. We are locked down and we can't just travel just like we used to. And I'm proud to say that the Institute of Directors of Luxembourg and the Cube in Ireland have understood this and are conducting all our 21st century board leadership masterclasses, including the Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, virtually, because then we don't pollute the planet. Trying to get to teach people about how not to pollute the planet. So you can't be teaching people how not to do it by doing it on the way, right? So aviation, we have to now look at aviation very different. And today I can tell you the aviation industry is probably the most impacted industry in the planet, along with tourism, because people cannot just get on planes and fly like they used to. But you can see the aviation industry is trying to get everyone back on flights, but people are not traveling like they used to. So what does the aviation industry have to do? They have to replace their planes from diesel and aviation fuel and petroleum-based fuels to hydrogen and go for electric aviation and go for what I call biofuels that can definitely reduce their massive carbon footprint. But I hope you understood before that how much of damage SUVs, heavy industries, trucks and containers are doing before aviation. Aviation is number 5. I have already given you 4, energy and those 4, which are much worse. Now, what is the next level of pollution and ruining the economic emergency? Is shipping, ladies and gentlemen. So when we talk about shipping, we talk of big container ships which are now like countries afloat. What are they powered with? Diesel and polluting fossil fuels. They have to move from that to hydrogen and electric if they want to be part of the solution and not part of the pollution, right? So now we have covered 6 elements which are contributing to wrong business models, contributing to inefficient economic business models, inefficient economic growth models, because they have not understood what I have now talked about as the causes of having unsustainable economic models. I want to repeat those causes once more for everyone's benefit. Number 1, cause of a wrong economic business model or a wrong economic national model is using polluting fossil fuels for power and energy. Number 1. Number 2 is the using of SUVs, which are causing more damage to the planet than heavy industries, trucks, aviation, and shipping and cars. More than all of this is SUVs. So next time you see someone driving an SUV, you should be talking to that person and saying, do you know you are a part of the problem of the climate emergency and the code red for humanity? I hope everyone listening to this, if you are remotely having a SUV, sell it out and buy an electric SUV or a hybrid SUV. Become part of the solution. Don't continue to be part of the pollution. The third polluting area is heavy industries. And the first heavy industry we had to get out of is the fossil fuel industry, the coal industry, the petroleum industry, the diesel industry, the plastics industry, single-use plastics industry. These are heavy industries which are ruining the planet, not causing any good to the planet. So if you want to persist with those industries, you have to exit from fossil fuels if you want to stop this problem. The next area is trucks and container trucks. This is the next area. The next area, number 5, is aviation. We have to stop flying around the world and use flying only on an emergency basis. So if there's a patient who needs treatment, and the only way you can get that treatment is by moving to another country, then fly for heaven's sake. Save your life. But not if you want to do holidays and if you want to do meetings. The world has seen all the meetings and education that you want can be done virtually without traveling 5 minutes. Can you see how the world has got educated through COVID? Now, I always say COVID-19 was nature's wake-up call to businesses to not waste and pollute the planet. COVID-19 did that to a lot of businesses, and now businesses are saying, don't even come to office. Why do you want to come to office? Work from home. Unilever has said they will work from home 4 days, 3 days a week. Some companies have said we will only work from home from now. Isn't that a revolution that has started simply because nature woke up all the leaders of the planet and said, you don't have to travel everywhere. You can do it from your home. So make your home your office, make your home the way that you manage things in the future. And this is an amazing discovery. Shipping. Now, shipping accounts for 80% of the world's economic assets being moved around the world, 80% is coming from shipping. Now, I have told shipping is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th polluting problem. Even though it's accounting for 80% of the world's maritime trading, the maritime trading is accounting for 80% of world trade. 80% are ships, okay? But it is only the 7th item on the problem of pollution. But they need to now move to renewable energy sources like hydrogen, like electric, like biofuels, and avoid what they're doing. Now, the 8th item on pollution and disrupting the economic model are cars. Can you see how far down cars are? I have only number 8 in terms of pollution to the planet, right? After power, after SUVs, after heavy industries, after trucks, after aviation, after shipping, now we come to other cars, right? But a revolution has started in other cars. We are now calling it the electric revolution, the electric car revolution. And electric cars are already, in 2021, already about 2 to 3% of the world automobile industry. But they say by 2030, they will be almost 30 to 40% of the world's transportation. But you and I have to accelerate it even faster if we want to save the planet. So I would say anyone watching this program should ask the question, how do we move to electrics and hybrid vehicles by 2025? That is the cutoff period if you want to save the planet. So nations and companies and businesses and leaders of nations must accelerate the electric vehicle transition by 2025 should be the cutoff point, not 2030 and 2040 and 2060, if we want to save the planet. Right. Now, are people doing this correctly? What countries are doing this correctly? So let me give you some examples who are doing it right. So Norway today, as at 2020, 74.8% of all their passenger vehicles sold are now electrics. Number 2 country is Iceland, where 45% of their new cars are already electrics. Sweden, 32%, Netherlands, 25%, Finland, 18%, Denmark, 16%, Switzerland, 14%, Portugal, 13.5%, Germany, 13.5%, Luxembourg, 11%, France, 11%, Belgium, 10%, United Kingdom, 10%, Austria, 9.5%, Ireland, 7.4%, China, 6.2%. Now, I have given you the nations which are doing the right thing, at least are trying to go to electrics, but all the countries who are below, I would say 45%, are too bloody slow. They have to start doing this much faster, right? And United States of America, 2.3%. That means 98% of car sales are yet fossil fuel car sales. Can you see how backward a country America is? Can you see that a majority of Americans driving these four-wheel drives, SUVs, and these we call it the various SUV type vehicles are actually living on another planet because they have not understood they are contributing to the damage of the planet. No wonder they ended up with a leader like Donald Trump, who doesn't even understand why they have to give up coal power and why they have to give up fossil fuels. Because sadly, I can tell you that a good percentage of Americans have no clue about 21st century thinking and what is needed. In fact, I would say, go to the extent of saying a good 30% of people who support Donald Trump are people who are ignorant about the climate emergency and who have not understood that they have to give up these matters and not move forward with these matters. Right. Now, let's look at the world of electric vehicles and a company who is changing the game. So this is our last session. The company who is changing the game for electric vehicles is none other than Elon Musk and Tesla. So Elon Musk, every company he has, whether it is SpaceX, whether it is Solar City, whether it is Gigafactories, whether it is Tesla cars, are all solutions to the climate emergency, all solutions to the code red for humanity. So the first lesson I want to give everyone as we discuss Tesla is, if your company wants to have a business in the future, if your company is led by a 21st century leader, if your board has 21st century leaders at the top, if your company wants to be part of the solution to the problem of climate emergency and a solution to the code red of humanity, select businesses that are 21st century businesses which are solving the challenges, not contributing to the problems of the world. First lesson learned from understanding Tesla. So what do we know about Tesla? The first thing we want to know about Tesla is Tesla was founded on 1st of July 2003 in California, San Carlos, California. Now, let me tell you something about Tesla. Tesla was not founded by Elon Musk. Elon Musk bought Tesla. But Elon Musk saw the future potential of Tesla, and that is his genius. That is his brilliance. And once he got into Tesla and bought Tesla, he turned Tesla into an engine for sustainable innovation and growth in the world. So today, Tesla is a company that has 3 gigafactories. What do we mean by gigafactories? A gigafactory is a factory that can produce 500,000 cars in one place, 500,000 cars. All the other factories in the world are under 20 to 30,000 cars in a factory. At max, they will produce 100,000 vehicles. Tesla has four gigafactories in the world, and the 4 biggest factories on the planet are all Tesla factories. What is the kind of vision someone must have to create the world's biggest factories and create solutions to the world's problems? This is the first great thing about gigafactories. So where do they have their gigafactories? The first gigafactory they have is in Nevada, USA. The second gigafactory they put up was in Shanghai, China. And that factory is coming on stream this month, and they have already started selling Tesla in China this year. Isn't that just amazing? The third biggest gigafactory is going to start operations in 1 month's time, is in Berlin, West Germany. And the 4th biggest gigafactory is now being constructed, and they are going to start it in India. Look at his strategy. He has set up gigafactories in Berlin for Europe, Nevada for USA and North America and South America, Shanghai for Asia, for East Asia, and he's going to launch the new factory in India for South Asia. 4 gigafactories will be in operation by 2022, 2023, and these are all making 500,000 electric vehicles per annum, and also the Tesla amazing electric batteries for the cars, and making the Powerwall battery for the company, for the households. Because Powerwall is his solution to retain the energy we take from the sun through solar, to store it and use it for a month. Powerwall is his strategy too. So what are the big brands these companies have? Tesla is their number one brand. SpaceX is their number two brand. Powerwall is their number three brand. Gigafactory is their number four brand. Solar City is their number five brand. What is common about all these brands? These are all brands solving the climate emergency, not contributing to the climate emergency. Now, I can tell you there are some car companies who are trying to solve the world's problem and be part of the problem at the same time. I call them having their feet in both pollution and creating problems and the solution at the same time. If you have your feet in two baskets, you're going to be split in two, right? That is what will happen. So when you talk about companies like BMW, like Mercedes-Benz, even companies like Toyota, even companies like General Motors, 90% of their business is all in polluting fossil fuel vehicles. Only 1 to 10% is in the real future of the world. So we need companies to go to the future of the world, like Nissan, Renault, like Tesla, like NIO in China, like BYD in China. We want companies who are 100% in renewable energy solutions, not having 3/4 of their feet in the pollution. So electric car vehicles are doing brilliantly in the world today. So Elon Musk says, stop being patient and start asking yourself, how do I accomplish my 10-year plan in 6 months? How do I accomplish my 10-year plan in 6 months? So that is a lesson for all these 19th century leaders who are running nations and running businesses who say, we'll solve the climate emergency in 2040, 2050. They are saying, if you have a 10-year plan, achieve it in 6 months. Then he says, you'll probably fail, but you'll be a lot further having gone along than the person who simply accepted it was going to take 10 years. Isn't that an amazing quotation from a visionary 21st century leader? If you have a 10-year plan, achieve it in 6 months. So how do I translate this amazing quotation to today's situation? All the world leaders who want to support the planet and survive the planet should try to achieve it in the next 6 months before 2025, not wait till 2025, 2030, 2040. That is to me the lesson I learned from reading that quotation. So what do we know about Tesla? Its entire business is now absorbing Tesla solar from the sun, creating energy storage with the famous batteries. They also have Tesla cars and Tesla battery cells. And everything they're doing is about solutions, not pollution. So is Tesla a major force in the car business? But remember what I told you, cars are only the 8th problem, not the first 7 problems. So in 2020, the global fleet of Tesla vehicles and solar panels enabled our customers to avoid 5 million metric tons of carbon dioxide. 5 million tons of carbon dioxide. So Tesla has now become a part of the solution, way ahead of everybody else. And its basic attack is on the fossil fuel industry, right? And they are changing the global ecosystem for energy, global ecosystem for gas. So Tesla, I already told you, has 4 gigafactories. They have now built a new gigafactory in Texas also. And that means they have 2 gigafactories in America, in Nevada and Texas. I already talked about Shanghai, Berlin, and India. And they are opening the next gigafactory, and they are moving their headquarters to Texas this year, so that from California, they are moving to Texas for the new Texas Gigafactory and operations. Now, somebody said, why is Elon Musk doing this? Here's my reason why I think he's doing this. Because when you begin to think like a 21st century leader, you begin to understand the mind of another 21st century leader. And I think, because I think 21st century leadership, I can understand his mindset. Texas is the oil capital of America. Texas is where they found oil. And Texas is known as the fossil fuel capital of America. If you want to change America, where do you want to change it first? You want to change it in Texas. I believe that is why he has put his next Gigafactory and moving his headquarters to Texas. If you can convert Texas, you can convert the whole of America, right? And that to me is his strategy going forward. So Elon Musk is, I would say, the most visionary 21st century leader on the planet. And if I had to select only one leader from national leaders, business leaders, multilateral company leaders, organization leaders who epitomizes the 21st century, I will only choose Elon Musk. Only choose Elon Musk. Because why? He understands science. He's a PhD in science. So my first criteria is met. Number two, he has an urgency to impact the climate emergency. All his businesses are impacting the climate emergency. Tesla is, SolarCity is, SpaceX is, and Gigafactories are. Number three, his business model is entirely based on triple bottom line, where he's putting planet and people before profit. So he meets the third criteria. Fourth criteria is, has he embedded the 21st century model of three emergencies and three disruptors into his board agenda, into his CEO agenda, into his management committee agenda, into his leadership committee agenda, into the mind of all his employees? Absolutely. Not only has he embedded it in their agenda, he has built strategy around it. So the greatest 21st century leader living on the planet today is Elon Musk. And I want to, in the same breath, say that the second best business leader would be Paul Pullman and of Unilever, who to me is the greatest single non-business influencer in the planet today. I would, without hesitation, call Greta Thurnberg as the most influential person on the planet who has said and called out all the world's leaders on this issue more than anyone else. So I would call her the greatest single influence. And even Sir David Attenborough and Professor Johan Rockström of Sweden have given Greta Thunberg the full respect, because she has done more, like I said, than the United Nations combined and all the world's leaders combined to raise awareness and to ask leaders to wake up that our house is on fire, and not to wait for 10 years to put the house on fire, or to do it in the next 6 months, or the worst case scenario is to do it by 2025. So I have now given you three amazing leaders. We continue with Tesla. Today, Tesla's share price, which was only $86 on 2nd of January in 2020, is already crossed $700 today. From $69, $86, it is already over $700 per share. Per share, guys, and not some other story. Today, Tesla is the most valuable company on the planet. Okay, now, what else do we know about Tesla? So, in the year 2020, Tesla made 400,000 cars, 4 lakhs. The biggest car company on the planet is Toyota and Volkswagen. They made over 1.7 million cars. Toyota made about 1.5, 1.7. Volkswagen made about 1.5 million cars. Little Tesla made 400,000 cars, 4 lakhs. But what is the most valuable company in the world? The company that sells 1.7 million cars or the company selling 400,000 cars, which is 1/4 of what Toyota is selling. And the beautiful story is that Tesla today has a market cap bigger than Toyota and bigger than BMW and bigger than Volkswagen and bigger than GM, bigger than Honda, bigger than Daimler Benz, and bigger than Ford combined. You can combine the market cap of all these companies as per December 11, 2020. The combined market cap of all the companies I said on Wall Street is 582 billion. Tesla is already crossed $600 billion. Now, has Tesla created an amazing company? Has Tesla created a company bigger than all these companies put together? Yes. And that is the greatest story that I can share with you about Tesla. That a company that started in 2003, just 18 years ago, is bigger than companies who have been in operation for 100 years and more valuable than companies in operation for 100 years. And why has that happened? Only because of one man, Elon Musk, and his vision to convert the world's to become the world's biggest car company. And I'm going to make a second prediction now. The first prediction I made was that by 2030, by the year, I said that we are in 20 years from now, by 2040, that we will have to all carry oxygen and put a face mask and carry water bottles. Let me give you a second prediction that majority of these car companies will close down. Majority of these companies who are in fossil fuels will be closed down. I can tell you today, by 2030, by 2040, you will not hear of majority of these car companies anymore. You will hear about Tesla. You might hear about Toyota. You might hear about BMW. You might hear about BYD. But majority of these other car companies would have closed down because they are too linked to the fossil fuel industry. All the oil companies, ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, Saudi Aramco, Elf Aquitaine, by 2030, 2040, they will be all closed down. And Koch Brothers and Adani Coal will all be closed down. That's my second prediction. Any company making anything with fossil fuels will be closed down. That includes plastics. So single-use plastic companies will also close down. So my prediction is, if anyone wants to invest in the future generations of this world should be investing in a company like Tesla and not in any company that is polluting the planet. And hydrogen, I think, will become a major source of energy in the future, especially in the shipping industry and in the airline industry in the future. So I have finished talking to you about the economic emergency. And in summary, I have talked about economic emergency is impacted by the climate and social emergency. I told you that exiting fossil fuels is the #1 urgent action anybody should do and should do it by 2025. I have said the business model or a national growth model must have 5 UN SDGs. And I talked about goal number 7, to move into renewable energy 100%, to goal number 12, accelerating sustainable consumption, and to make sure that the entire business is run with innovation and infrastructure model, and to look at goal number 15 and 6, which is to do with the life on land in terms of reforesting and water. So I have now covered the big elements, and the last element is to also tell you that any company doing any innovation should be only focused about sustainable innovation and sustainable consumption. The word innovation and creating blue ocean strategy for the sake of it, which is going to contribute to the pollution of the planet, is finished. That kind of innovation is a disaster. So they should have cost engineering, integrated approach to clean resources and renewable resources. They should have a zero carbon footprint. And that is the future of a 21st century economic emergency strategy that is going to come and change the world in the future. So I hope you have now understood, everyone, that the world needs 21st century leaders to drive the world's business models and growth models to be addressing the economic emergency by addressing the climate emergency first, by exiting fossil fuels, and by addressing the core threat for humanity, by putting people and planet before profit. That is the economic emergency solution. A business model, a national growth model that focuses on putting people and planet before profits and exiting polluting fossil fuels, coal, petroleum, natural gas, and diesel should have no mention by 2030, 2040. If anyone is yet living in the 18th century, 16th century, they will yet be using coal power and using fossil fuels in 2030, 2040. By 2025, we should have exited all of this. Do you have any questions for me?
Great, Dr. Fernando. So thank you very much for giving a clear explanation and explaining everything to us. So thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you all soon on our 4th episode, which is called New Technology Disruption. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for listening.